And welcome. Thanks for joining us for this panel discussion of the Story of Plastic documentary. We are super glad that you're here joining us virtually on Saturday morning to talk about plastic pollution and what we can do about it. This really is such an important topic. And yeah, we just appreciate you being here, taking an interest, being a part of the conversation. So my name is Cameron. I am the Environmental Program Specialist at the City of Shoreline. And I'll be your host this morning. If you're new to Zoom, this is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you, but just know that we're very glad you're here. You can reach out using the chat box, which should be either at the top or bottom of your screen. And I did just want to say, so this is just the panel discussion portion, and it's okay if you didn't watch the film yet. You should have received a link in your Zoom confirmation email when you registered. That has a link to watch the film for free. So if you haven't used it yet, the link is good through the end of Sunday. So you can watch it later today or tonight or tomorrow if you haven't done that yet. So this discussion will still be very, very relevant for you, even if you haven't seen it. So we will be going till noon, and I'm going to try to save a couple minutes at the end for questions or kind of take some as they pop up. So if you have a burning question, please submit it using the Q&A button, which again should be at the top or bottom of your screen. If you can't find it, you can also use the chat. That's totally fine. And yes, thanks for bringing that up, Michelle. The movie is available on demand on Discovery. I think it's rentable on Amazon too as well for a couple bucks. So, if you missed the link or something and just want to rent it, that is great too. So submit questions using QA. You can also like people's questions and that will bump it to the top of our list. If you need assistance, I'll try to be monitoring the chat here as we go and try to get back to you on that. And let's test the chat out right now. So I'm going to put an icebreaker question into the chat. And the question is, what is most important to you about stopping plastic waste, about this whole thing, kind of a why you're here question. So if you don't mind, just leaving your answer in the chat box. We will I'll introduce our panelists and tell a little bit about why I'm here, why we at the City of Shoreline are doing this. So yeah, please, if you feel so inclined, please just leave your comments and thoughts in the chat. So Shoreline, City of Shoreline and the Shoreline community have a longstanding goal and commitment to create a sustainable community in all respects. But as the film points out, we don't exist in a bubble, and the impacts of the plastic crisis, have reached us here, impacted how we recycle. And we don't want to be, exporting harm to other parts of the world. So in 2019, we worked with Recology to amend our solid waste and recycling contract to try to address this contamination issue, to try to make sure we were sending good quality recycling materials to actual markets. And we also participated in the King County Responsible Recycling Task Force to try to develop recommendations to improve our regional recycling system, again, to increase transparency and just really make it more effective, more local, and more responsible. And then lastly, we want to acknowledge that we can't recycle our way out of this mess. We really need to address the overuse of plastic at the source, talking about production and consumption. So yeah, we need to pursue. As a city, we're committed to trying to create the sustainable community. We need to pursue not just recycling, but also waste reduction to achieve this goal. So thank you so much. We have some awesome thoughts coming in on here. Yeah, providing a better world for my children. Yeah, I appreciate this difficulty of what to do about it besides not just buying plastic covered products. Because it's really tough. We feel limited as consumers. So microplastics, just a lot of great things, a lot of great comments. So thank you for sharing those. And now I'd like to introduce our three panelists, which are, first we have Brooke Struesma. Brooke is a Waste Zero specialist for Recology King County. In her role at Recology, she coordinates residential, commercial, multifamily, and school outreach programs throughout the county. Brooke develops and implements innovative waste reduction programs and speaks to wide audiences about the importance of proper waste management practices. Our second panelist is Heather Trem. Heather is the Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington, and she has more than 25 years of experience in environmental work, ranging from zero waste to toxic chemicals and habitat issues. At Zero Waste Washington, her focus has been on reducing upstream sources of waste and addressing downstream impacts, getting toxic chemicals out of products, eliminating plastic pollution, and building on the organization's signature producer responsibility policy initiatives. Zero Waste Washington's mission is to drive policy change for a healthy and waste-free world. And last but not least, and Aaron, I actually don't know how to pronounce your last name.
All right, no one does. It's Gagnon.
Gagnon. Okay, great. I was going to do something like that, but I appreciate you correcting me. So Aaron Gagnon is the retail sales manager with Recology King County. So some of you have probably visited the Recology store in Shoreline or Issaquah or Burien and Bothell, and Aaron is the manager over the store program. So the Recology stores are really awesome hubs. They provide in-person customer support. They serve as a drop-off location, or in pre-COVID times, served as a drop-off location for a lot of those hard-to-recycle items that can't be processed through our curbside program. And they offer a variety of goods and gifts that inspire a zero-waste lifestyle. Her favorite part of the job is educating customers on easy, everyday switches they can make in their homes. So thank you each so much for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pull up my notes. So, okay. So we'll just dive into the questions here, and we're going to start talking a little bit about the recycling side, then we'll move into some zero waste lifestyle choices with Aaron, and then we're going to talk more globally, big picture policy with Heather. So, but as I mentioned, each of you, if you have something to say, feel free to chime in on each question. And attendees, feel free to, leave questions in the comment or in the QA or the chat box. So first one, maybe just real quick, each of you, if somebody didn't see the film, what is one big takeaway, one thing that you'd want people to know, or sort of what was most impactful for you? And we can start with Heather and then go to Aaron and then to Brooke.
Sure. As you all know, we are all super concerned about plastics. It's in our lives, it's all over the place. And we hear about it being an environmental justice issue, but I really felt like the film did a great job of really demonstrating how it's truly an environmental justice issue.
Totally, thanks. Aaron?
Yeah, I agreed. I think that we all know, as Heather said, that plastic is a major issue, but the big standout for me was that plastic production is driven by supply. It's not driven by demand. And so it's really just these large companies pushing plastic onto us as opposed to us asking for plastic.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many takeaways from this movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, I would highly recommend watching it either today or tomorrow, or renting it from somewhere. But I think that it's just eye-opening to see how much plastic has been produced in the past 25 years and how it's only gonna increase if we don't act. I also think that it's impactful to hear that the fossil fuel industry knows that we're moving away from fossil fuels to power our cars and heat our homes, and they're using that as a motive to create more plastic as well.
Awesome, thank you guys. So let's talk a little bit about recycling. So as we see in the film, while recycling is important for sure, it has some very real limitations. So maybe if we can start with Brooke, but each of you, if you want to chime in your perspective, what role does recycling play in addressing the crisis versus the role of waste prevention, or sort of that idea of a waste hierarchy?
Yeah, so recycling is not going to save us from the plastic crisis. not all plastics are recyclable, and the plastics that are recyclable are only able to be recycled once or twice before they are actually like downcycled into a plastic bag or into plastic film. So the ultimate goal is overall waste prevention. We need to decrease our overall waste, and this means decreasing garbage, and it also means decreasing recycling that we create too. If you look at like a waste reduction hierarchy or a zero waste hierarchy, the second to last is often actually recycling. So this means that we need to reuse and reduce and refuse before we even actually get to recycling.
Heather, Aaron, anything to add to that?
I would just jump in and say, if you've seen the film, they have this fantastic example of somebody trying to bail out a bathtub full of water, which is the plastic consumption, and then they're using a teaspoon to get the water out. It's not going to happen until we shut off the tap water of plastic pouring into our society.
I lost my unmute. So there's been a lot of media attention about recycling is broken, recycling is bad. And we actually don't agree with that as a nonprofit working on reducing trash in Washington. Because what our perspective is, let's get rid of as much waste as we can in our lives. Less is more to begin with. So just bring your own bag, etc. But for the items that are remaining in your waste stream, let's recycle them well. And a lot of recycling for paper, metal, and glass is in fact really going well in Washington. I'm going to show you a graph of this later. It needs to be improved. It's plastics, there's where the recycling problem is. And recycling has kind of gotten a bad name across the board because of all the negative PR, but really it's really the plastics that's the biggest problem. And everything is fixable, and we'll talk about that later. But people do tend to conflate the overall recycling with the plastic problem, which is the big challenge right now.
That's a really helpful distinction. And maybe just if folks aren't familiar, I should have pulled a slide of the waste prevention hierarchy, but does anybody know kind of a standard drop down for that?
It's in my show. You want me to show it right now?
That's fine. We can get to it later.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So just a follow up. So what's and this is for Brooke and Recology maybe specifically. What steps can we take individually and collectively, or Heather, this would be applicable for you too, to improve the recycling system? As the ones collecting and sorting through our recycling, maybe can we talk a little bit about this idea of wish cycling and why it's important to recycle right?
Yeah, well, we can first all be expert recyclers and recycle right, and then teach those around us to do the same as well. Wish cycling is a term that we use often. It's kind of defined as like people who just throw everything into their recycling bin and hope that down the line someone or through the process it gets recycled, and that's just not the case. So I like to use the example of cleaning out your recyclables. So we don't wash anything, we don't clean anything, we don't empty the rest of the yogurt out of your container at the recycling facility. There's just no way for us to do that. And so it's really up to you to be recycling properly and to make sure that all of your recyclables are empty, clean, and dry so that they actually can get recycled. I would like to put in a little plug. We usually offer tours of our facility, and it's really eye-opening to like be able to see that firsthand. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now, but we are going to be offering a virtual option. So you can sign up on our website if you're interested in that, because it is very impactful to see that like we can't actually clean out your recyclables, and you have to do that step before you put it into your blue bin. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I think that was, for me personally, one of the impactful things from the film was the idea, the way that the industry also has pushed and supported recycling, which is good in some ways, but also as this sort of panacea for, something that is a way bigger problem. So yeah, focusing on, and then that brings to the idea of wish cycling and just throw it all in there, it's all good, which in reality isn't the case. Heather or Aaron, do you have anything to add on that subject?
I'm going to defer to, I'm going to talk about this in my talk, so I'm going to wait.
Okay, great. So let's move on and follow up for Brooke, just out of curiosity, what are some of the craziest things you've seen in recycling?
Yeah, I
recycling
love
bins?
this question. So the most common contaminants that we see are those plastic bags and plastic film, and then like things that are contaminated with food and with liquids. And those are really the biggest issues, but some of the craziest things that we have seen are like car doors. There was like an animal head that like came through, bowling balls. Sometimes we'll get like a full set of like glass bottles or like wine bottles that are like perfectly intact and they just for some reason didn't get smashed in your bin or in the truck or when they got to the facility. I was at the material recovery facility on Tuesday and I was just there for probably like 5-10 minutes, and walking on the line I saw like a baby doll and stuffed animal and shoes and clothes. I probably could have honestly made a full outfit out of all the things that I saw. So yeah, if you name it, we've seen it at the MRF.
Crazy. Yeah. And as soon as you have that link for the virtual tour, Brooke, please share that, because I know folks are really interested. And yeah, that was hugely eye-opening for me to get to go and see the process. And it made things click kind of for like, oh, this is what the system is designed to handle. And these are the things it's not designed to handle. We have a question coming in can we volunteer to monitor containers? Not currently. That's a very interesting idea though. So yeah, we'll keep you posted if anything like that materializes. We are working a lot, mostly in the apartment and business sectors in Shoreline, to monitor routes and then go and help the individual sites that have had a lot of problems. So it is something we're thinking a lot about and trying to put out more messaging about. But yeah, feel free to send ideas if you have them. So let's turn to this idea of zero waste. So I want you all to imagine we are living in a truly sustainable zero waste Shoreline or zero waste Seattle, zero waste King County. There's no single-use plastics. There's little to no trash in general, and definitely none of it is ending up in the environment. So maybe just in your minds, walk me through, what does that look like? What are some of the things you see, and maybe a little bit about how did we get there? What kinds of systems are in place that we don't currently have now?
Well, why don't I go first, because I know Erin has a lot to say about this. There is the stuff that we put in our recycle bin, and that is something that we can easily tackle and are working on hard. And that's particularly what Erin and Brooke are working on. There's also a whole nother category of waste that people sort of forget about until it hits you, and that is items that break in your home. So this is the right to repair movement that I'm getting at. I'm not going to talk about it in my policy talk today, but it is something that I think really gets you to true zero waste. And that is when you don't, if your chair breaks, people put it, I was over at the transfer station the other day with something that really was something I could not fix. It was some weird thing that we had received that was completely broken, there was nothing, it was weird. But anyway, there were all these mattresses there. There was all this furniture. Like I looked at some of the furniture and it was just missing a wheel, or it was missing a piece of wood in it. And there was all these really interesting items piled high that were going to all go to the landfill. They were all looking to me like they could have been fixed and then given to someone who would probably really like to have it, a piece of furniture and things like that. So the right to repair, and then the other thing is cell phones. Your cell phone breaks and it's really hard and expensive right now, and we need to fix that. And like, for example, my husband, my favorite example on this actually is my husband. He uses one of those electric toothbrushes, a Sonicare. He loves it. He loves his Sonicare, and he wants to replace the battery. When the battery it died, the battery died, and he tried. He couldn't figure out how to do it. He called the company. They said, "Oh no, sorry, you can't do it." So he had to basically put that somewhere. I guess we put in the recycle bin. I'm not sure. And then and then he had to buy a new one instead of just simply replacing the battery on a perfectly functional item. So the right to repair movement, in my mind, is something we need in the United States. And it's very difficult to get that policy passed in Washington right now, because we have big high-tech companies that are very dominant here. But others, it just needs to pass in one state. So I'll stop there. But Erin, I know, has a ton of good tips as well.
Yes, this is an area of passion for me. Completely. To piggyback on what Heather said, just for that piece, I think that a zero waste King County, a zero waste Shoreline would include a lot of repair tips. So we, and the stores, when they are open, we have hosted mending workshops where people can come in and learn how to sew and repair their clothing. Because I think that a major piece that's missing right now is just the education around it. A lot of people don't know how to repair their clothing. They don't know how to, put a patch on a piece of clothing or repair a seam. And so I think that as a zero waste world would include a lot of workshops and a lot of education sharing from the people that do know how to do that. And then from my standpoint, from the store standpoint, it really includes using a lot of reusable items. So getting rid of those single-use items in your home that are very easily replaceable with durable, reusable items. I mean, Ziploc baggies, paper towels. There are so many things in your house that you can easily make a swap for something that's going to last you for years and years and years and years. And in addition, really focusing on conscious consumerism, which I know is kind of a hot button word. A lot of people throw that around, but just being aware of what you're buying. So really trying to prioritize, you're going to purchase something that's made out of recycled or upcycled materials, as opposed to purchasing something that is made out of brand new virgin materials.
Those are great thoughts. Thank you. Brooke, anything?
Yeah, I mean, Erin and Heather pretty much hit the nail on the head. But yeah, we as consumers need to rethink, but then we also need to redesign our current systems as well.
Cool. And I do have a couple questions here maybe we can jump in on. So one is just a recycling question for Brooke, but for big cardboard boxes that do not fit in the bin, can you put those next to your cart? How to get those picked up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we want you to break them down, make sure that they're flattened. Preferably put it out next to your blue bin on a day where it might not rain, but we do live in the Pacific Northwest, so that's difficult. But if you do have like a bunch of boxes that aren't gonna fit in your bin, flatten them down and tie them together with like some twine or string, and then just place them right next to your recycling bin.
Cameron, you want me to take the mattress question?
Yeah, I was going to mention that King County started that pilot program, but yeah, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah. So mattresses are a major big problem for like 3 reasons. One, the mattress industry tries to tell you that you need to replace your mattress every 10 years, which I can tell you, it doesn't need to be every 10 years. That's something they're just trying to tell you. It's when your mattress needs to go and you need a new one. Second, it's a huge load to the landfill. The city of Vancouver up in British Columbia did a study, and I think it was something like either 4 or 7% of the volume of the landfill. That is a lot of volume in a landfill. So it is something we need to address. But it's expensive, and we don't have a great system right now here in Washington to do it, because it does need to be essentially like a product stewardship type of program, and they have that in other states. So we do intend, not this year because of COVID, and maybe not the year after that, but we do intend to do a policy bill in Washington, which would be where the manufacturers pay for the end of life, and even the consumers could pay a little bit at the beginning, so that when your mattress truly is dead and it's really ready to go to recycle, and then all the components in a mattress are very recyclable. The wood, the batting, and the metal, there's only a little bit that's not recyclable, and that can just go to a thread, a fabric type of process and get reconstituted. So a mattress is a great thing to recycle, but right now we don't have that in Washington State, and we need it.
And I will just add, that's great comments, and we'll dive a little bit more into that idea of product stewardship. But yeah, King County's just started a pilot. So at a couple of the transfer stations, they are accepting mattresses.
For a fee or for free? Is it
for
free?
A fee. So it's
for a fee. That's my point.
Probably, it's for a fee. So right now it's fully from the funded by you, but you would be paying the same amount basically to take a load to the dump as to actually recycle it. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I have a kind of an anecdote on this. We had an old hand-me-down pull-out couch, from my wife's grandparents. The cats had destroyed it. And so it was time, it was time to go. And I was like, I'm going to recycle this. This is just wood and fabric. And it was such, and metal. And it was just such a pain. Like, my hand, it got all cut up, and like, I wasn't able to get all of it. Maybe I got like 75%, but it just that to say, yeah, it's these things, a lot of them are possible, but we need systems and processing capacity in place to do it. So with that, let's slide down to the next question. I guess a couple of these are great questions coming in. So how do citizens be effective in stopping single-use plastics? We'll get to this in some of Heather's portion. And then Pamela points out that garbage collection still requires plastic bags for pet waste and small items. So yeah, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. Oh, Erin.
You have something to say. We've had a lot of customers that have come into our stores, and they actually carry used newspapers to pick up their pet waste, and then they can toss it away. So that was a really great example that was shared with us. So you do not have to use a plastic bag for your pet waste.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this is creativity. So let's maybe a lot of these questions we'll address kind of towards the end. So let's talk a little bit about the individual side, about the product side. So Erin, you manage a store where the entire mission is to kind of help people rethink some of these everyday things that we have just taken for granted, and that maybe the industry has sort of influenced our possible decisions. So can you talk a little bit about the store, about the idea of zero waste living? What products are you liking? What kind of things have been inspiring to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Recology as a company has 4 stores in the Pacific Northwest region: Bothell, Beery, and Issaquah, and then of course Shoreline. It is worth noting they're currently closed due to COVID, so don't go rushing off trying to visit a store after this. We will keep everyone posted on a reopen date. But these stores are really focused around encouraging consumer swaps. And so there's a lot of things that you use in your everyday life that could be switched for a more durable, more responsible version. And so our goal is really to have people come in, regardless of where you're at your zero waste journey, and have us help switch you to a better lifestyle. And so we carry things. I have a few examples here. We carry socks that are made from reusable fibers. So they're made from fabric scraps down in Portland. We carry wood toys as opposed to the plastic toys that you're probably going to give a million of at Christmas. We carry beeswax, which if you have never used this, it's absolutely amazing. So it's going to be an alternative to like plastic wrap in your home, or reusable single-use sandwich baggies. And so again, this is very, very easy to use. My husband used about 1 million Ziploc baggies when we started living together, and I thought he was going to kill me when I told him that we weren't going to use plastic anymore. So if he can switch to using this, I can assure you that any of you can make the switch. And then of course we have, the reusable sandwich bags. We have stashers. So these are made out of silicone. And they are amazing for reuse. They stay sealed. You can actually cook with them. You can put them in your microwave. It's great. And so one thing that we look for in all of our products is that you're going to be able to come into our store and feel good about whatever you purchase. And so we really look for items that are made from recycled or upcycled materials. We try to source those products as locally as possible, because of course it's going to completely destroy the point if we're shipping overseas from China. We look for educational materials, and we look for items that are going to replace the single-use items in your home. And one thing I just want to point out is very oftentimes we have people that come into the store, and we live in an age of influencers. So people on Instagram are showing off their year's worth of trash in a small mason jar, and that is so overwhelming for people. And so if you're going to start making those switches, don't feel overwhelmed. Just know that you can make one switch, and maybe in 2 to 3 months you make another switch. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So please don't feel overwhelmed. Just start making 1 or 2 small switches in your life.
Great, thank you. Any other, Heather, Brooke, any cool products you guys have seen that have been really helpful for you personally, or just that you've seen out there?
I'm going to hold on that for the moment.
Okay.
The stasher bags are personally my favorite because you can put them in the dishwasher as well. But yeah, all the products that we have at the Recology store are really awesome. I often say, and when I'm giving like recycling composting presentations, we don't need everybody to do zero waste perfectly. We need everybody to do it imperfectly, because like every small act that you can do, if it's just one thing, or like Erin said, a few months down the road you make a second change, that's what we need. We need everybody to at least try.
Love it. I think
I do have one comment, Cameron.
Oh, jump in. Yeah.
One, I love, and I mean love, the Recology stores. You all have done such an amazing job. They're so fun to go to, and there's so many cool things. So I highly recommend them. But I also want to let you know that there are 2 zero waste stores in Seattle. One is called Eco Collective in Ballard, and they are more focused on, and they're all different. They're really different. So you go to all 3 and get different things. So they're more focused on some personal care stuff and household items, household cleansers and things. And then Scoop, which is in Capitol Hill, but I just got a notice yesterday they're moving to Kirkland at the end of December, and they're going to have 4 times the floor space. And they're more focused on zero waste food, so grocery shopping. And then of course, if you go to PCC and some of these other grocery stores, they have really great bulk sections. But right now they're mainly closed, but after COVID, they'll open up again. So, there are some really strong zero waste things you can do, but I just adore, it's so much fun going to the Recology stores because you guys are always having new things, and it's just, I love them. Love your stores.
And yeah, second that, Erin, you've done just a great job curating the stuff there. So always really appreciate the selection. And Brooke, I think you had mentioned there's another store in maybe Ballard area.
I live in Ballard, so I go to Eco Collective all the time. But there is a store in West Seattle. I think it's called Public Goods. I have not been, but I've heard that it's an awesome zero waste store as well.
Awesome. And then I just heard about the Loop company, which is more of a nationwide thing, and I think it's still sort of getting off the ground. But basically, they have a selection of healthcare, even some pet products, and some groceries for common big name brands that you get in these little metal canisters. And so it's a deposit program. It's shipment based, so there's that issue. But yeah, so it's, instead of plastic, it comes in a little tin, and then they collect it back, and so it's kind of a cool idea. Great. With that, let's maybe we can, maybe as a bit of a segue to the policy section, could we maybe each just weigh in on kind of individual actions? And from the film, I think that was another interesting thing to me, was the way that the industry tried to sell the narrative as, oh, this is all your fault as a consumer and you have to deal with it. So can you maybe weigh, like, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, we want people to be recycling well, we want to be, making good decisions with all of our little decisions, but where does that balance hang, and how much responsibility is in our hands, how much influence is in our hands, and how much do we need to address the system and the producers? Easy question.
I mean, individual act is important, but I also think that it's important that us as consumers put pressure on the producers, because they're not going to change if we don't ask for it. So I think that is the biggest thing. Like, yes, do make changes within your life to lead a more sustainable zero waste lifestyle, but also use your voice, go out and vote. I mean, I'm sure Heather will talk a lot more about what we can all do in the legislation realm, but yeah, use your voice, put pressure on our producers and the manufacturers to make changes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it does fall on us in the way that it is our responsibility to put pressure on these consumers. It also falls to us to educate the people around us, right? Because I have been blown away by, there's so much education that just even in my immediate family that people weren't aware of. So just start talking about it, get other people excited about this. And then as a collective, we can start pushing for these policy changes. We can back Heather and all of the really neat work that she is doing, because without the voice of many, we're not going to see these changes happen.
And yeah, I agree, absolutely. And I'm older than most of you all, and or all of the panelists, and maybe many of the audience. So when I was a kid, we didn't have recycling, and I lived in Texas, and then it gradually came in. And so it is about norm changing, and it's about things that you think will never change, do change. Like, look what happened with COVID. In COVID, people were saying, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. And then all of a sudden, dang, they could do it in 2 weeks. So I feel like we have now with the COVID demonstrated that major societal changes can happen and will happen if we really just do it. And so it's a combo, I think, of three things. One is the public changing their own behaviors and talking to their neighbors in education and schools. Two is market campaigns directed towards the big corporations. So like online petitions and things like that. One that's going on right now is DoorDash. So DoorDash and all those major companies that do the delivery, they're like 7 big ones in the United States. There's a petition online right now to ask them to make a little thing that you could check and say, I don't want you to bring me a napkin, a fork, or a spoon, or a straw. And that should just be a standard thing on their app. Why is that? Why? I mean, most people are eating at home. They have a regular fork. They don't need that plastic fork. People are just getting piles of forks in their drawers, plastic forks. So corporate campaigns. And then lastly is legislative, which I'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, the political realm is where you get a lot of changes made.
Awesome, thank you. And I just noticed we do have quite a few questions about some of these zero waste products. So maybe we'll take a few of those before we jump into the policy, Heather. So let me see if I can find these. When I was growing up, we used foil to cover dishes and wax paper to wrap sandwiches. Are those good alternatives to plastic, or do those kind of have their own problems? So yeah, maybe aluminum foil, recyclable, wax paper, I'm assuming. Is that compostable?
The only issue I say with the aluminum foil is, like, if you're using it to wrap up a sandwich, it's easy to get the breadcrumbs out of there. But if you're using it to cover lasagna and it has cheese and sauce all over it, that's really hard to clean. And then we wouldn't want you to toss that dirty piece of aluminum foil into the recycling bin. So if you can stay away from using it on things that you won't be able to clean off of it, then use beeswax wrap as an alternative.
Hey, Brooke, can I ask you a question? Because I've been doing this at home and I'm not sure it's correct.
Yeah.
Because of the, like, if I have a little ball of foil, it's going to be less than 3 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm like taking it and bunching it into a bigger ball of foil, so it's greater than 3 inches, so it'll go through your system. Is that a correct interpretation of what's good to do?
Yeah. So we usually use the rule of thumb as if something is smaller than your fist, it's gonna fall through the cracks in our machinery. So toss things that are bigger than the size of your fist or 3 inches into the recycling bin. So yes, it's okay to put things together like aluminum foil. That's a good example.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've been telling people that, so I wanted to make sure I was saying the right thing.
Nice. Yeah, and again, the idea is with some of these products, things that we're just using once, you know, if there's a way to make it something where you just rinse it off and use it again, which the beeswax wraps, yeah, I've used they work pretty well for a number of applications. So, okay, another question. Aaron, is there any plans for Recology to have sales online? So we have some people, some very interested folks.
Yes, we get that question quite a bit. It is something that we're working with our corporate office to see if that is something we can offer. Obviously, with the stores being closed, the demand has just skyrocketed for an online store. So stay posted, fingers crossed. Hopefully that is something that we can offer in the future.
Hey, Aaron, why don't you all do a holiday outdoor pop-up bazaar? And then people could be outdoors in some spacious location, a parking lot or something, and you could have a holiday shopping for people. I'd come. I think people on this call would come.
That will be on my discussion with my boss on Monday. So stay posted, possibly.
Love that idea. And
we'll put it in our newsletter. If you get it figured out in the next week or two, we'll put it in our newsletter.
Great.
And there's some great questions here. I may not, apologies if we don't get to them. I'll try to send out a follow-up email with some more answers here. We did have a question about plastic bag recycling, and there is a website I'll send out that there's locations to drop off a number of different plastic bags and film. So we'll send that out as well. But let's move on to the policy, because this is really a huge piece. And, you know, I think people are a little bit more familiar maybe with the individual piece of, you know, recycling and zero waste. So Heather, why don't you take it away, and yeah, let's talk about policy.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a policy update. This is a wonderful forum. Love this and love the movie. So we are a statewide nonprofit. We work to make trash obsolete. Our number one goal, we are a policy shop, is to pass laws at the city and state level. We also do research and we do pilot projects. And we work in these 7 areas. And I want to highlight to you the top left-hand corner, producer responsibility. That's where the manufacturers pay for the end of life of materials. Right now, if you have an old computer monitor or TV, you can take it to Goodwill. They are paid by HP and Dell and Microsoft to take that and then to recycle it in Washington State, creating jobs here in Washington, and or they can put it on their shelf and resell it if it's still in good shape. Now, another really important product stewardship bill is medicine, safe medicine return. This is a bill that we paid for the lobbyist for, and it passed. Took 10 years. And we never testified. It was hundreds of people, 10 years of effort. And we passed the first medicine return bill in the country. And it's going to go into effect later this month for the whole state. So King County already has it and Snohomish County already have it, but we're now going to have it for the entire state. And this means that you can take your leftover medicine to the sheriff's office, the pharmacy, or the hospital, and it'll go in one of these blue boxes, and then it's paid for to be disposed of by the pharmaceutical industry. And since passing the law in in Washington, California, New York, Oregon, and other states have passed the same law. And then another thing I want to highlight for you is a couple of years ago, we helped pass a paint stewardship law, and that is kicking into effect. It was supposed to kick into effect November, but it's going to kick into effect in April because of COVID. So if you have leftover paint in your home or your storeroom, save it right now, because next April you'll be able to take it to a hardware store or retailers who are participating in the program and transfer stations, and it will be paid for by the program, and so it'll be free to you, and it will be latex paints and oil-based paints and things you can see on the left-hand side here. Latex paint is very, very recyclable, and they have these computers to make the same green, the same blue, the same white again and again, and then they sell it for half price at places like Habitat for Humanity. So instead of $32 a gallon, it's $16 a gallon for really good, high quality latex paint, sometimes really very premium, in fact. Oil-based paints are not recyclable, so if it's in good shape, they put it up on the shelf and you can get it for free to use it up, or they treat it as hazardous material. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 2020, which was just concluding. It was January through March, and then next year. So as we were discussing before, we have a recycling crisis, we have a plastics crisis. So our goal in this policy world is to reduce the use of unnecessary plastics in the first place, and then build markets and restore our recycling system, including creating jobs here in Washington. So let's start with bags. We have 39 reusable bag ordinances in place, and I will draw your attention to Shoreline because I was helping get that passed in Shoreline. It was very exciting when it passed there in 2013. And this got us to the tipping point where we could have a statewide bill. So this was led by Senator Doss and Rep. Peterson. Peterson is from Edmonds, so not too far from you. And it was led by these groups, and it took 2 years, but it just passed. And what it's for the whole state, and it says no thin carry-out bags. The goal is to have people bring their own bag, and starting in theory January 1 of 2021, it would be an 8-cent pass-through charge on a paper bag and a 2.25 mil plastic bag. A mil is a thousandth of an inch. It's how you gauge plastic film. And then January 1, 2026, it would go up to 12 cents, and it will be a 4 mil bag. And that photo on the bottom there is a 4 mil bag. The store keeps the 8 or 12 cents. And this is important because we want the motivating factor of people having charge. That gets them to bring their own bag. But the stores, it's very expensive for the stores to buy these bags. The paper bags cost between 10.5 and 12.5 cents. Whereas those little thin plastic bags only cost, the ones I showed you a minute ago, these only cost 0.5 to 1.5 cents. So it's a big deal for them. Now, this bill was signed by the governor on March 25th. It was supposed to go into effect January 1. However, because of COVID, We've been working with the partners on that, and we don't like it. We're not happy about it, but it will probably get delayed to July 1 for the whole state. And that's because of the supply issues of the bags, and also because we're now going to include all restaurants. And this is a big change, and the restaurants are really hurting right now. So this is the reason there's going to likely be a delay. It hasn't, there's going to be a request. We've already put in a request with all our partners to the governor to do a proclamation, then it would have to be a bill in the session. We don't like that, but we are in a COVID time. So let's talk about styrofoam. So we had a bill that that just was discussed and did very well in session to ban styrofoam food containers, recreational coolers, and styrofoam peanuts. This was also led by Senator Das and then Rep. Durer in the House. And we got it out of the Senate. It did pretty well, but in the House Environment Committee, it did die. And I think in large part because we had the bag bill going this year, just now. So we plan to bring this back in 2021. This is a really big issue for the plastic advocates because it's not recyclable, especially the food waste on it. So we had a wonderful, wonderful bill that was led by Rep. Mead, who is now in the Snohomish County Council. He got appointed there. And this had to do with the recycled content in beverage bottles. So all these major companies have made pledges to say that they're going to have 100% recycled content in their bottles. And Naked actually already has 100% recycled content. And this is super important because you normally make plastic out of oil and gas. And so you can replace it with recycled content, and that helps bring real value to the recycling system. And it makes a major difference in terms of greenhouse gases. You're not getting that fresh oil and gas out of the ground. We based our bill off of a California bill. This is a guy testifying in California a year ago. And unfortunately, the governor vetoed this bill. And we got it out of the Senate, we got it out of the House, and it was such a great bill, and it's such a disaster. But COVID basically did in a bunch of bills. The governor vetoed 146 bills and budget items all in one day. It was his last day. And the reason is because he was trying to save money in our state budget. These had financial cost to the state, and it was very sad, but we completely get it, and we totally support what the governor was trying to do, which was save our economy. And we're going to bring it back next year, but it was just, oh my God, it was such a good bill. In the meantime, California just passed the bill August 31st, so they are the first. We're not the first. We would have been the first, and it was such a great bill. Okay, so here's a bill that we didn't know was a COVID bill when we were working on this. This was led by the city of Seattle. And so when you do a bill in the legislature, the legislative session runs from January to March or April every year, but you do all the work beforehand. So last fall of 2019, when we didn't even know what a COVID was, we were working on this bill with City of Seattle leading it. And the idea is that all those wipes, so the personal care wipes, the baby wipes, the cleanser wipes, some of them are being marketed as flushable. And this is a photo from the sanitation districts of Los Angeles County. And you can see that the toilet paper in their sewer system, in the pipes, does break down, but the flushable wipes do not break down. They're made of a cellulose, and they just are too strong and don't break down in the time they're in the sewer system. And this is what happened. So this was a huge overflow at Golden Gardens Park in Seattle last summer. It's baby wipes and tree roots. It's disgusting. And this is the problem. So when you go to a big box store, you'll see no name, I guess the name's there. Anyway, you'll see a pallet, and you'll see moist, flushable wipes. So these are in theory flushable. They are made of cellulose, but as you know, they don't necessarily do it. They don't break apart. And then the next pallet over, you'll see another type of wipe. And notice that this does not say anything about flushable or not flushable. This is made of plastic. So all those not flushable ones are made of plastic, and people are dumping them down the toilet because they think that they are flushable because they're confused. And so what this law did is it was a marketing labeling bill. It was led by Rep. Fitzgibbon, and it says that the boxes like this have to have a big, and I mean like a third of the size of the box, big, thing that says "do not flush," a symbol and wording, so that people will not flush these down. They'll get the message that these are not flushable. Now, we would have liked for a little bit better bill and the governor did sign this, and it turned out to be a COVID bill because there's been a whole lot of sewage problems because of all the wipes people are using during COVID. We would have liked a better bill. We would have liked a bill that actually said that those flushable ones have to break down in the sewer system. And so we're hoping that California will go one up on us and do that bill next year. So that was great, and we're happy that happened. Okay, so that was a taste of some, we had 12 zero waste bills last session, so I'm only doing a taste right now of what happened last session. But let's talk about next year and the big bill that we're working on, because this answers some of the questions that you all have had. And that is, we're working on a packaging product stewardship bill for all the things that go in your recycle bin. And the idea is the manufacturers and brand owners would pay for managing the packaging and paper products at the end of life. So this is everything: your metal cans, your glass bottles, your glass jars, your plastic items, paper, newspaper, all your paper products. All of those items would be paid for to be recycled by the producers, the manufacturers, and they would then be incentivized to design them in ways that they could actually be recycled, because we'll have very strong recycling targets in that bill. And it's you know, it's a heavy lift. So this is based after what's going on in Europe. They've had this kind of program in place in Europe in Germany since 1994, and in Canada. So the really one of the best programs is in British Columbia, and it's called Reusable BC. It's been in place for about 5 years, and they have a recovery rate, which is kind of like a recycling rate, of 75%. So keep that in your mind right now, 75% for these materials. And here is our situation in Washington State. I know this is a bit of a busy slide, but for those materials, the packaging and printed products, look on the left-hand side, you'll see the word residential. So this is the material that's generated by our residents in Washington in 2017. And if you look at the blue box, you'll see paper. So that's the paper that's generated in our residential system. And if you look across, you'll see a blue bar, and it's saying that 48% of our paper is recycled. But see the gray that goes down, 52% of our paper is going to landfills in Washington State. This is crazy. Paper is very, very recyclable. And you can see, for example, for plastic, which is in purple, 16% is being recycled and the rest is being landfilled. And you can see the same thing for metal and glass. Now, as I was showing you, Reusable BC has a 75% recovery rate. In Washington State, same year, 2017, our recycling rate is 44%. So the goal of this bill is to actually go way up in our recycling in Washington for those materials to be recycled. Obviously we want to have waste reduction in the first place and have it paid for by the manufacturer. So this would shift the cost. It would not cost anyone in Shoreline any money to do recycling. It would be free, and the manufacturers would pay for it. Right now it's probably embedded in your garbage rate. So the city of Seattle would charge you, the city of Shoreline would charge you less for your garbage bill, because it would be, the shift would cost. Now, as you can imagine, this bill is a heavy lift. That means it's a bill that's going to be hard to pass. We are working hard on it. In California, they had a bill that almost passed. It only had 4 votes on August 31st, just now, that it failed. And so we are really hoping we can get a bill in Washington. It may not happen this year, but because of COVID, it may take longer. It's a multi-year bill, but we're working hard on it. And then I want to just give a little teaser on some upcoming activities that you might be interested in. So if you are interested in legislative work and legislative bills, there's going to be a Legislative 101. It's only an hour. It's online on November 17th, and it's being hosted by the Washington State Recycling Association, and it is free. And it's going to be talking about how legislative bills get passed. I'm going to be one of the speakers. And then we're doing a British-style bake-off, because the theme is an afternoon tea. I'm going to be making scones, and we're going to have a competition on your items that you've made to show virtually through the Zoom. So it's going to be really fun. It's only an hour. I highly recommend this if you're interested. And then we're doing on November 30th a waste summit, and you can sign up. Again, it's free, but you must pre-register to get the link. And this is going to highlight different speakers on innovation in the Pacific Northwest. I think my favorite is going to be Beta Hatch. Beta Hatch is farming insects to feed animals. So they have this huge farm of insects and they're making animal feed out of it. And this is to help reduce some of our food waste challenges. But there are all sorts of cool speakers. And in addition, it's going to be the finals for our Zero Waste Hackathon that we've been doing with students at colleges from universities from Oregon all the way up to British Columbia. They're doing business plans for zero waste, and there's going to be a judging and an award for them. Awards, I should say, plural. So this is that hierarchy that Cameron mentioned before. This is what we subscribe to, everyone on this call, all your presenters today, which is first, prevent the waste in the first place. Do that first. That's the most impactful. It's the cheapest. It's the easiest. Second is reuse everything as much as you can and get it fixed if it's broken, and then recycling, and then recovery, which we oppose, which is incineration, and then disposal. So that is all I had here for today. But if you are interested, we have a quarterly e-newsletter. We only come out 4 times a year and a couple other emails. We do not like to spam people, so sign up for our email list. I will stop there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. Really wonderful. And I'm just going to see if we have any questions. So maybe one that wasn't addressed. So it sounds like sort of the last bill you talked about, the extended producer responsibility for all packaging types in the state, would sort of address a lot of the questions about particularly the problems brought up in the film. And, you know, how can we work with producers, you know, as consumers, like our options really are just limited in the stores because of what's out there. So it sounds like maybe just recap a little bit about how that would influence sort of the options people are seeing in stores.
Yeah. So this is a pretty powerful policy tool because it incentivizes the people who are designing the package to make the packaging recyclable. Right now, if you get a coffee in one of those multi-layer laminate pouches, so it's got paper and metal and plastic laminated together, that is not recyclable. It's so Recology has, if you put it in your recycle bin, Recology has to send it to the landfill, right? Recology, yeah. And so this actually has a fee structure in there for the manufacturers. They pay more if something's recyclable, and they pay a lot. I mean, they pay less. So in British Columbia, for example, they're paying 11 cents per kilo for something like a paper that's really easy to recycle, and $1 for the laminate pouches. So for those pouches, so there's a driver for the manufacturers to redesign their packaging. But another really critical thing in this bill that we've worked on all summer is that all recycling across the entire state would be the same. So you would have a list that's a harmonized list. So it wouldn't be so confusing when you go to Shoreline, you go to your next door cities, and you go to work somewhere else, and they're all different rules. It would be all the same across the entire state. And it would bring recycling to places that don't have recycling right now. There are parts of our state with no recycling at all, or all they can recycle are bottles and paper. So there's really restricted recycling when you get outside the I-5 corridor. And so this would make it so that everyone would have access, all paid for by the manufacturers, just like Europe, just like Canada. This is not breaking ground, but it would be breaking ground in the United States.
Cool, thank you. And then maybe let's just do our wrap. I mean, that's a huge, the extended producer responsibility thing. I really can't emphasize enough. The more I learn about it, the more exciting it is. And just hearing that, a lot of places already have this in place. So a lot of these multinational packaging producers are already embedding the cost in their products. So it really wouldn't raise the cost of the actual products for you and I and, in Shoreline. So highly recommend checking out Zero Waste Washington's work. And as I mentioned, I'll send out a link of a lot of the resources that were mentioned today, try to loop in a few more of these questions, but just due to time, is there anything else, maybe Aaron or Brooke or Heather, just one last thing that you wish, everybody in Shoreline, one action, concrete action we can do to wrap up?
Well, I'll start. Bring your own bag. So if you're going to the grocery store, bring your own bag. It's already the law. And the more you can do that, the more it'll help the stores. It saves them money. And then you don't have all those plastic bags that Recology does not want. It clogs their system. So bring your own bag, and don't put your bags down your recycle bin. They don't want the plastic bags in film. Don't do it.
Mine is the stasher bag. Like, buy a reusable sandwich bag. I swear you will not regret it. It's great. It's an easy switch, and like Heather said, if you have Ziploc baggies, those do not go in the recycle either. Those also go in the trash. So don't be putting those in the recycle for us.
Mine would just be to educate someone about something that you learned today or from the movie. And if you can educate someone today, then try again to educate another person tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and so many great things. So like I mentioned, I'll send out a recording with a list of the links and some of the events Heather mentioned, and some ways to get involved from there. But just thank you so much for joining us. And I do encourage you, if you haven't watched the film, please use that view link. And like Brooke mentioned, pass it on. So we have a view limit for how many we are licensed to show. So if you know somebody who'd be interested, they could still use register for the Zoom event, even though it's already happened, and they'll get the link to watch the film for free. So please do share that. We want to use up all those views. And just, appreciate you showing up on a Saturday morning and hopefully, leaving this really heavy topic feeling somewhat hopeful, I think. So there is a lot to be hopeful about and a lot of great work that we can all do together. So,
and Cameron, thank you for hosting. This was really fun.
You bet. I really appreciate you guys being here, and it was fun to do. So take care, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah, bye. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.